Good morning, April 22, 21. Veterans Land Board will come to order. First item on the agenda is approval of minutes from our last meeting on January 28th. After the board has had a chance to review and assuming no questions or comments, could entertain a motion to confirm for the record.
I have no questions. I move approval.
I'll second.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the minutes. Next item on the agenda is a non-action item that Rusty will present. It's our quarterly investment report.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. As the commissioner said, this is a non-action item. My name is Rusty Martin. I'm the Chief Investment Officer. During the fourth quarter, U.S. GDP increased at an annual rate of 4.3%. That followed an increase of 33.4% for the third quarter. That increase reflected the continued economic recovery from the sharp declines earlier in the year due to the COVID-19 pandemic. On an annual basis, GDP decreased during the year by 3.5% in 2020, compared with an increase of 2.2% in 2019. The U.S. unemployment rate ended the quarter at 6.7%. That was down from 7.8% at the end of the third quarter. And again, that reflects continuing efforts to mitigate the economic impact of the pandemic. The Fed was quiet during the quarter. If you'll recall, in March of last year, they decreased their target Fed funds rate from a range of 1.5 to 1.75% all the way down to 0% to 0.25%. And they reiterated at their December 2020 meeting that they're going to maintain that target range until labor conditions have reached levels consistent with their assessment of maximum employment, and inflation has risen to 2% and is on track to moderately exceed 2% for some time. In addition, they also reaffirmed the continuation of the balance sheet normalization program that they put into effect in October 2017. They also said that they would continue monitoring the implications of incoming information for the economic outlook, including public health information, also including inflation pressures and international developments, and they would use whatever tools necessary as appropriate to support the economy. In addition, they indicated that they would, quote, be prepared to adjust the stance of monetary policy as appropriate if risks emerge that could impede the attainment of the committee's goal. So basically they're on standby because they could change their strategy at some point, and they probably will. Our strategy continues to focus primarily on providing the liquidity and cash flow necessary to meet continued loan demand and debt service payments. And we focus only secondarily on maximizing total return. As a reminder, the portfolio is composed primarily of commercial paper and short to medium term treasury, agency, corporate, and taxable muni bonds. The duration during the period decreased slightly from 3.53 years to 3.4 years. And our targeted duration for 2020 was approximately 3 to 4 years. So we're right in the middle of that target. As far as the performance is concerned, page 3 of the report, looking at table 2 in the middle of the page, you can see our return for the quarter was basically flat at 0.07%. The benchmark was basically flat too at 0.05%. 1 year total return was 2.38%. And that was 2 basis points higher than the benchmark at 2.36%. Yield to maturity at the end of the quarter was 0.83% versus 0.11% on the benchmark. The only other thing is I would highlight that the table at the bottom, table 3, is only updated once a year at the end of each calendar year. We did update that. And you'll notice that the last column on the right, for each of the measurement periods, 3, 5, 10 years, and since inception, our portfolio has outperformed the benchmark, ranging anywhere from 62 basis points to 138 basis points over the 10-year period. And for the life of the portfolio, since we started measuring performance, which was in 99, in 21 years, the portfolio has outperformed the benchmark by 100 basis points. And I'd point out a slight error in that benchmark return for the since inception, the last number in that table. It says 2.2%. That should be 2.30%. So the spread there, 100 basis points, is correct. As I said, this is a non-action item, but I'm happy to answer any questions you may have.
Any questions from the board? We got Judd.
Yeah, just a quick question, Rusty. Some of the things that I read indicate that some of the financial analysts predict that the current stimulus and deficit spending that we have will run its course as far as stimulus to the economy in the varied predictions, 6 months to a year, maybe 15 months. And some of them are recommending that caution after that period of time, because it's essentially artificial stimulus, and they predict things might reverse. Do you have any thoughts on that? And is there anything we need to consider from the standpoint of what you're doing?
Well, I think the answer to that question is yes. There are things that we should consider. I hope to believe that we have already considered them. If you look at the allocations that we had at the end of the year, you'll see that we have quite a bit of cash. About 35% of the portfolio is either in cash at the state treasury or is in cash with the State Street, who's the custodian. That is, there are several reasons for that. Number one, we don't know what the future is going to hold. We know at some point the economy is going to reopen. When it does, it's going to open. It's going to be strong, which obviously should reflect some inflationary pressures, which could trigger the Fed to reverse its stance. They keep warning the market that at some point they will reverse their stance. And so when they do and they start raising rates, that's going to have a negative impact on fixed income securities. The other part of that is, because of what the Fed's doing now to stimulate the market, there's really a lack of yield in almost every asset class in the fixed income sector. Treasury bills basically pay, short ones pay zero. Some of them have negative rates. So there are very few options to invest a great deal of money in anything that's going to generate what I would call an attractive return without going really far out the risk curve. And first of all, we wouldn't do that anyway. But secondly, we can't really go outside a pretty conservative risk curve. The only option we have there is in the corporate market or taxable muni markets, and we're still limited to nothing less than an A rating in those markets. So we are well positioned for a couple of things. We're well positioned for a rally, and we're also well positioned for the period when the Fed does start raising rates. We will have a lot of cash that will insulate us from the effects of raising rates, but it also will give us the liquidity to take advantage of opportunities as those rates begin to increase.
Well, that's a great report. I feel a lot better. Thank you, Rusty.
Yes, sir.
Any other questions? Thank you, Rusty. Item number 3 is consideration potential action on the introduction of new fees for the Land and Home Improvement Loan Program. Charlotte?
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Charlotte Mumford. Staff recommends that the board authorize the imposition of loan origination fee in the amount of $200 in the Veterans Home Improvement Program and $396 for loan origination fee in the Land Mortgage Program to cover cost of credit reports, verification of employment, and usage of loan origination system for all closed loans. Staff will begin the process of amending board rules to provide for the loan origination fee in the Land Mortgage Program, with the fee for both programs becoming effective upon the board's final approval of the rule amendment for the Land Program. I will be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Charlotte, this is Grant. I was trying to understand a little bit on the history here of our fees, and what fees are incurred by all applicants versus closings. Could you help me kind of understand that? My understanding is the land loan program, it's about $350 today. I have no idea about the homeowner improvement program. But could you talk a little bit about that?
Sure. The fees that are currently charged are paid by the borrower in the land program is the $250 appraisal fee, a $75 contract service fee, a $25 servicing setup fee, and a $63 tax service fee for the monitoring of the property taxes in the land program. The home improvement program, the borrower pays for a $125 title search and a $10 flood certificate. There are other fees that the borrower and the seller negotiate, which is the survey and the title commitment. But the only fees that are paid directly for the program are the fees that I just listed.
Okay. And is there a history on how long have those fees been static? Have they changed a lot over time, or?
No, they have not. For example, the costs that we're proposing or the fees that we're proposing now, when the program was for the contract for deed program, the only cost to the program was for the single credit report, which was approximately $4.95, and we used an in-house program to originate those loans. These fees do not typically change that often. There were other fees that were in place years ago that we have now, we no longer charge for the program, for example, an application fee, but those fees do not typically change that often.
Okay. I guess my thoughts were just, this is obviously a significant increase off of our current fees. I totally understand that the cost of doing business in these loan programs has gone up, and this would be a path for us to pass through those costs. I guess I was just trying to also think about, are there other ways that we can kind of be revenue neutral in all of this, whether that's changes in the target rate versus the actual discount that we offer on the land loan program for those with the VA rating, or what that VA rating threshold is. I'm kind of just wondering if there's other things we could kind of research here that could allow us another pathway here to capture those costs without having to have that step change on the fees. I don't know. I just put that out for discussion, I think.
Those are things that we can discuss. And I think you're referring to the discount on the interest rate for the housing program. Is that what you're referring to?
Correct. Yes.
Okay. So at the moment, we do not have such a discount for the land program.
Yeah, I understand.
Charlotte, I may have asked, in the individual briefing that I received, but how do fees stack up versus, say, the VA program and/or say USAA or any other kind of veteran-focused home or land program that's offering mortgage financing?
So currently, the fee that we're proposing to introduce, these are fees that are charged by in the mortgage industry. Some of those fees are higher than what we're proposing. We're proposing the new fee to just strictly cover the cost that are being passed to us by third parties for the program.
I'll just mention too, right? Formerly being at USAA and in the mortgage department. So in these people who play in this market, right, they can differentiate themselves in different ways, right? You can be the no fee or low fee provider, you can also, compete on the rate that you're offering, or somewhere in between, right? I don't know necessarily how we want to view ourselves within that spectrum. As far as, do we want to try to compete on the rate that we're offering our veterans, but we're going to pass through all these fees, or do we want to minimize the fees that we're putting on the veteran community, and have just a competitive interest rate out there with the market? I don't know if others have thoughts on kind of how we want to position ourselves in the market, and how we're servicing the veteran community there.
Well, I have one comment about this. I think that we have a duty to our veteran community. We fulfilled that very well. And the key thing that I think, if we're going to, if the decision is to charge these additional fees, that they need to be transparent. So it isn't just a $200 fee that shows up that the Veterans Land Board is charging, but it would then indicate that is in payment of these third-party charges specifically, so that the veteran who's obtaining one of these loans can see that we're not profiting off of what they're doing. We have the interest rate, but we're not charging fees like a lot of lenders do just to increase the income. I think that's an important perception for us to have.
Agreed, and that would be disclosed in the closing disclosures.
But is it broken down, Charlotte, so that it shows what each of the items are?
We can't do that.
Okay. I think that would be a perception thing that would make a real difference, so that the veteran knows that this is simply an offsetting charge to take care of the charges that otherwise we incur in terms of making the loan. I think that Grant has a very good point, though, about how we do this. I'll defer on that, but my only point was to make sure that it's clear that we're not profiting off the veteran, but this is a recoupment of the charges that otherwise are being incurred, in specific recoupment.
Yeah, I'd agree with what Jed's said there. However, we can do that legally in making sure that we make sure veterans know that these are the costs that we're incurring. But I guess where I would kind of land is I'd like to look at this a little bit more and think about other ways, other levers that we could exercise to make up and recoup those costs, short of raising the fees. And if fees are the only option, then we could ultimately go that route. But would like to kind of study it a little bit more if the board agrees.
I'm okay with that. I think we can pause and dive deeper in the interim to examine all these issues, because I think it's important, like Judd says, to be transparent, but also maybe if we have some science or even anecdotes of how our customers, our borrowers, make their evaluations. Is it like, as Grant is saying, is it based strictly on the interest rate, the overall rate that they're paying? Or is it fees? I can just say from my personal experience, I just look at the rate. What am I going to be paying once I take on a loan? So maybe getting our arms around that. If we've done some surveys with some veterans, that would be helpful, because and also just remaining competitive. I think it's important to just kind of understand what else is out there, and understand, again, the escalating costs, as Grant pointed out. But I'm okay with tabling this matter until the next quarterly meeting.
You need a motion on that, or we just automatically have tabled it?
I think that what I'm hearing is a motion to table staff's recommendation and ask staff to do some more research, get some answers, and report back at the next meeting.
Well, if you need a motion, I'm happy to make the motion.
I think we probably would be good to have a motion, yeah.
Motion is made, seconded, and item is tabled temporarily. Thank you, Charlotte. A lot of questions there, and thank you for being diligent on it.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda is a non-action item, and that's discussion of the VA state. And before I do that, before I present that item, I forgot that if you are a visitor under the Texas Open Meeting Act, feel free to And if you have any questions, concerns, or want to testify in any of the items, please submit your request to be promoted as a panelist to the Q&A section. I do know that Judge Canales and or members of her team will be on standby for item number 6, but we will go to item number 4 right now.
Morning, Mr. Chairman, members. For the record, my name is John Berkeley, Deputy Director of the Texas State Veteran Home Program. This agenda item is for board information and requires no action by the board at this time. On March 30th, 2021, the Department of Veterans Affairs released their 2021 priority list of all projects that will and will not be funded. Annually, the VA provides grants to state veterans home programs to fund life safety code improvements, new veteran home construction, refurbishments, and the priority of the funding is in that order. Every application the VA receives is put on the annual priority list, whether it is funded or not. The amount of funding is determined by Congress as part of the VA's annual budget appropriation. The VLB submitted 5 grants requests for this year. First one, the Fort Worth home. Second, 2 life safety codes, one for El Paso, which is fire alarm systems, and a lift station, McAllen, health HVAC controls. We had a statewide renovation for mechanical roofs and flooring. And finally, Tyler, a renovation grant for HVAC controls, nurse call system, and air handler unit replacement. The VLB staff are working on the final application documents, which must be submitted by June 30th. Actual grant award letters typically arrive 2 months after the submission of the application. We anticipate that the letters will be released in late August, September. Once the award letters are received, we will return to the board and ask the board to accept the, approve the and accept the grants as awarded. Again, this is a board item information, requires no action. Happy to answer any questions.
Any questions at this time?
No, it's good that this action is being taken. We're so much on top of it. I think it's impressive.
Yeah, no,
Grant, go ahead.
second that. You know, I'm glad to see we're taking advantage of these grants and the VA funds that are out there. The one question I had was just as far as the Fort Worth home and timeline. Could you provide just a little bit more information there? Is that construction process entirely contingent upon this grant, or if that grant doesn't come through, is there a contingency plan in place?
It is contingent because the VA provides 65% of the cost of the construction and the furnishings of the home. It is contingent on that. We ranked very, very high. In fact, we were the only home that was in the top 5 items. So we were quite sure that we will be funded. They usually go down to as low as maybe 90 items on the list. The list is usually a couple hundred requests long. So we feel that where we are, that we should receive funding for all 5 of these once those applications are received and approved, and then we will return to the board and request your approval to accept.
Great.
Hey, John, I may have asked in the individual brief, but are we tracking, or maybe we should have government relations track any federal stimulus dollars that are flowing through the VA and how that's affecting maybe the agency's positioning?
We are working with that because the VA actually is providing some funding for state veteran home program for homes that have already either under construction or that are already operating. Because we did have an impact in the cost based on COVID-19, we are submitting a request to be considered for this, and we are working with government relations to utilize any type of support we can from Congress to help push through our request.
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of money. There's going to be a lot of money coming. I'm going to confess that I haven't been tracking where the actual line items are, but looking at just CARES Act, which it sounds like we're applying for through the governor's authority, but I'm also thinking about the infrastructure bill that's being discussed and whether or not brick and mortar, whether or not an agency like the VA will be a recipient. But in any event, thank you.
Thank you.
Any other questions on that non-action item? Hearing none. Next item is number 5. a report on VLB contracts.
Good afternoon, or good morning, actually. My day is going quickly. My name is Kelly McBride, and I'm the Director of Contract Management for the Texas General Land Office. Based on Sunset's recommendation, the board adopted a policy to provide greater transparency to board members and the public on contracts. And one of the requirements is an annual report. So in the packet, you will see that we have produced a report for you that summarizes major contracts, which would here going forward go for board approval. Some of these actually have prior to the policy. In addition, we have what we call minor contracts, and that's to distinguish those that are administered by the General Land Office on behalf of the board. And on that third page, you will notice a summary of contracts that are in negotiations or solicitations that are in progress. And so right now, when we look at the major contracts, the board has 20 contracts that meet the threshold of over $1 million. Overall, there's 52 contracts related to board operations. And when we say board operations, that includes the cemeteries, the veterans' homes, communications, and the land and housing program. Within the next year and a half through fiscal year 22, you'll have 16 contracts that will be ready for expiration. And so at that point, the agency will be reviewing the need for potential solicitations or extensions, which will be brought to you for consideration prior to those end dates. And so since this is our first time, I'm not sure how much additional detail or additional questions that you may have.
Hey, Kelly, under the authorizing legislation, I believe it was SB 20 from 3 sessions ago and or the sunset recommendation, what exactly can you remind me what the timelines were? Like we couldn't have evergreen contracts, right? So what's the longest time in which we can enter into an agreement?
So it's right now, the procurement law basically says 5 years is what they're looking at. However, when we're dealing with healthcare issues, so for the management and operations contracts, we can look at those a little differently because we're dealing with the healthcare of the veterans. And so that's not something you want to take lightly and transition quite often. And so we have internal discussions about what the best course of action for those solicitations are.
So there are exceptions to the rule, it sounds like, on the 5-year deal.
Yes.
Okay.
Due to the healthcare issues that are involved. Just like we personally don't want to change our doctor every 3 years, we wouldn't want that same scenario for our veterans in particular.
Any questions from the board on this report?
No.
No, I appreciate you putting it together and sharing it with us. This is helpful.
Great, thank you so much.
Thank you, Kelly. This is a non-action item. Number 6 is consideration possible action on an agreement with Nueces County on operating the Coastal Bend Texas State Veterans Cemetery in Corpus. I believe we have Judge Canales, one of our favorite county judges in the entire state of Texas, joining us today.
Eric, you're muted.
I believe the judge is muted. And so is Eric.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. For the record, my name is Eric Brown. I'm the Deputy Director of the State Veteran Cemeteries Program. As you mentioned, Mr. Chairman, action item 6 is consideration of possible action on an interlocal agreement between GLO, VLB, and Nueces County for the management and operations of the Coastal Bend Cemetery in Corpus Christi. To give the board a bit of a background on the efforts so far undertaken, in 2019, the county displayed an interest in opportunity for contracting with VLB for the management operations of our cemetery located in Corpus Christi. In 2020, the Nueces County Commissioners Court, with approval from the Commissioners Court, myself and GLO VLB's Office of General Counsel began formal negotiations with the county. The negotiations have progressed very well and are near completion. Under the proposed agreement, the county will fulfill several obligations that are specific to the management operations of the cemeteries, to include burial operations, administration, landscape maintenance, and facilities maintenance. The proposed budget for the first year will likely be within the range of $875,000 to $950,000 that will be paid in 12 equal installments invoiced monthly by the county. The earliest date the County Commissioners Court will vote on this agreement will be at their next April 28th, 2021 County Commissioners Court meeting. With VOB approval, Texas State Veteran Cemetery staff anticipate that the county will begin overseeing management operations responsibilities of the cemetery in the summer of 2021. With that, I'm open to take any questions that the board members may have.
Eric, I have a question about the context of this. Is there any difference between this contract and the other contracts that we have for the veteran cemeteries with the local communities? Or is this the same?
No, sir. Currently, the only other contract that's similar to this one is one that was executed with the city of Mission. The execution date was October 1st. That is going very well. And so there's no difference. The only difference is probably the size of the cemetery property and the magnitude of the activity levels of Corpus Christi.
Okay, that's helpful. Thank you.
Very welcome.
And Eric, does the mission contract include the same obligations around burial operations and landscaping facilities? Those are both similar?
Yes, sir. They are similar. And keep in mind, those obligations are start with the VA first. VA has very strict compliance mandates to make sure that we serve our veterans and their families properly. So it's exactly the same, sir. Yes, sir.
And I would also add that there may be nuanced differences just because of the different types of cemeteries.
Can you
with
state
regards
your
to
name for the
contract.
record?
Oh, this is Heather De La Garza, special counsel for the record. Apologies, Mr. Chairman. There are just nuanced differences, so it's not exactly similar language, but because of the specific nature of the cemetery, but it's substantively similar.
Yes.
And Commissioner, I see that Judge Canales is on the line.
Absolutely. Judge, would you like to offer some words?
Yes, thank you, Commissioner. It's great to be with you. I'm actually not too far from your office. I'm here in Austin, Texas today, where we have been engaged in Nueces County's legislative agenda. In fact, yesterday was Coastal Bend Day. So it's good to be with you. And let me just offer first and foremost my thanks and my praise for Eric Brown and his, quite frankly, his persistence, his diligence, and his care that he has taken in engaging Nueces County in this process. When we first embarked, it was pre-COVID times, and our desire was to be able to present a budget where we thought we could both assist the state of Texas in taking this cemetery into the hands of Nueces County, but also provide, I would say, a more localized approach to the final resting place of these heroes. I can tell you that our veterans community is so strong in Nueces County. As home to 3 military organizations and bases, it's not probably too surprising that many of them decide to come back home where they trained first. And so with the Coast Guard and CCAD and NAS Corpus Christi, we have such a robust veterans group. As a matter of fact, we started our very first Vax Our Vets program just a week ago. It was done with TDM, thanks to Chief Kidd, Chief Pena, our regional chief. It was a great success. Another kind of very specialized opportunity that we can present to you is that we have a Veterans Services Department within Nueces County. And the very person that leads our department at one time worked at the Veterans Cemetery as the director. This was prior to the contractor that was dismissed, of course. I'm sorry, he worked for the contractor that was then dismissed, but then he came over to Nueces County. So we also believe we can provide the institutional knowledge and experience that handling these cemeteries would create. And then finally, I want you to know that not only would we take this as a great privilege and an honor, but we also think we could help by working with the General Land Office and the Veterans Land Board to enhance the facility. For instance, I'm very familiar with the water issues that are there, as is Commissioner Bush. And we're using reclaimed water but I've had amazing dialogue with Water District number 3. And there could be potential in the future to bring better water so that we could keep not only the grounds more beautiful, but as you know, the soil moist so that the headstones could not suffer from such movement that often plagues our drought-ridden area. So whether it's our knowledge, our love for the military, our love for this sacred ground. We just buried one of my father's friends there, a Vietnam veteran, not too long ago. I can just pledge to you as the county judge that we will do everything in our power to not only make you proud that you've transferred or given us this opportunity, transferring this very important obligation, but we will do so with integrity, with compliance to your rules. We think we can do so cost efficiently, but I hope that you will understand, as we've never done this before, that the budget that we've presented to you really does allow for a little bit of latitude, because we don't know how much of our internal staff will need this very first year while we're, if you will, in our learning phase. That means that we know that we'll be using services from our auditor's office, our procurement office, our HR department, and our legal office. And so if our budget looks a little different, maybe it was because we needed to make sure that we could accommodate. I think every year under the contract, we would come up for review. And I know that we are very much willing to work with this board so that we could make any adjustments either way that would be necessary. I know that immediately you might want to know a little bit about our current status after the winter storm and our hurricane preparedness. As the emergency management coordinator for both, I can tell you that we plan on replacing, if we receive control here locally, we will make every effort to replace all of the palms that are all, quite frankly, just gone at the entrance, and enhance the ambiance for the families of these departed, so that they feel that they are coming into a cemetery that's truly honored. And I also pledge to go to Washington with you and your board every year so that we can talk to the National Cemetery. I asked Mr. Brown about the certifications that one can receive, and I know that ours is not the top. So my goal is to make sure that we receive the top national certification for this Coastal Bend Veteran Cemetery. Finally, let me say that our Senator Juan Chuy Hinojosa is also a Vietnam veteran. He is so active in our community. He's so thrilled that we've embarked in this important endeavor. And I know that he pledges, along with Chairman Herrero, Chairman Hunter, and Senator Colcourse, who represents Port Aransas, to work as a delegation to support Nueces County in this effort. I hope that we could be open by summer if this transfer, with your permission, would take place, because I know there's been a lot of anxiety from the local veterans. They ask me every weekend, every Saturday morning, you can tune in. In fact, I'm going to invite any of you at any Saturday morning. I am from 9:30 to 10, or 9 to 9:30, excuse me, on Veterans Roundtable every Saturday morning, talking about issues that are important to veterans. So with that, again, what an amazing staff you have, Commissioner. What an amazing privilege it's been to talk about something that I love so dearly, almost as much as I love the coastal beaches. But as like you, I carry a legacy that's important to my family. My uncle formed the American GI Forum to make sure that Private Felix Longoria could be buried with all other veterans who had served our country in a way that was not segregated in 1948. How long we have come and how far we have come. You, the grandson of a great American, and myself as a grandniece of another. Both of us share this important duty. And I know, although I do not hold the distinction you do, I would cherish it just as you would. Thank you for the opportunity to speak, and I stand by to answer any questions. Thank you.
You're gonna make me cry, Judge. You're gonna make me cry. Anybody who invokes my grandfather usually generates a little bit of activity in the tear ducts. Any questions from the board?
Well, I think it was a great presentation. I think we need to sign the judge up as our Memorial Day speaker too.
With pleasure.
I just say for the Judge Canales, thanks for leaning into this and being, such an interested partner in trying to work with our veteran cemeteries. I actually started my military training down in that area, and it's actually that experience, I think, that brought my family back here to Texas. And so, your words ring true with me, and so I look forward to this continued partnership, hopefully.
Thank you.
And Judge, for what it's worth, I recently gave a commencement at NAS Corpus, and it's the same school that my grandfather trained in on his way to World War II in the Pacific Theater. And just a great privilege to talk to the 6 grads. Unfortunately, 4 of the 6 were in the Marines. Only 2 Navy guys. Now that we got a few Navy, a few Marines on this call. But honoring our military is such an important role that all of us should take on. And appreciate what you're doing. One suggestion is, San Antonio is known as Military City, USA.
Yes.
I think Nueces County should be Military County, USA.
Oh, I love
Maybe
this idea.
trademark that. But this would be the first. This would be the first step toward it. But this is a voting item, so I'm going to ask the board if they have any additional questions to ask them. But if not, could entertain a motion to confirm staff recommendation.
I move to confirm the staff recommendation.
I'll second it.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously. Thank you, Judge, so much for your service.
you.
Have a good
Thank
time in
you.
Capital City. You'll have more
Thank
fun
you.
with us than them.
Thank you.
This has been the highlight for me. Thank you.
Thanks, Judge. All right, next item is number 7.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Heather De La Garza, Special Counsel of Veterans Affairs here at the GLO's Office of General Counsel. As you all can see from your packets, I provided you a memorandum outlining the information just providing you all today that we have entered into 4 what we call COVID-19 reimbursement agreements. And this is to pass through and reimburse our operators that are managing our operating as our Texas State Veterans Home for all the costs and expenses related that they've been incurring related to COVID-19. And so the memorandum is pretty comprehensive and specific and outlines all the information that I thought you all might be interested in. And I'm here to take any questions if you have any.
Any questions of council at this time?
When I read this, the only thing I was kind of curious about, hopefully the COVID pandemic is winding down, although some people are saying maybe it's spiking again in Texas. I hope not. As far as the reimbursement agreements, they cover what we already have spent as well as anything that comes up. Is that how it works, Heather?
Yes, Mr. Scott. Currently, they go into August 31st, 2021, and we're moving forward and pushing through some amendments that are in process to make it go through the end of the year to kind of, basically cover what we anticipate might be costs incurred by our operators. So the financial management team has done kind of forecasts to predict that, and that's how they're coming up with the not to exceed amounts.
Thank you.
One additional question, Heather.
Mhm.
I know we were talking about during the pandemic, there was some talk about the facilities and the HVAC systems and improving air circulation and filters and everything. Is that included in any of this as far as an item tied to the COVID pandemic that could be reimbursed? Or
So some of the HVAC I think might be covered by the grant and the grant projects because they might be more extensive projects. But as far as like individual filters, I will confirm for you, Mr. Moody, but I believe like filtering and things like that would be covered. Those are eligible costs that we could reimburse. If the operators bought HEPA filters, for example, we can reimburse that. Yes.
yeah, thank you.
Welcome.
Are there questions at this time? Hearing none, this is a non-action item. Thank you, council, for the update there. Next item on the agenda will be held in closed section. We can enter into closed session pursuant to Chapter 551, Subchapter D, Texas Government Code, Section 551.071. Since this is a matter that will involve consultation with our attorneys regarding attorney-client privilege information and legal issues related to this item. Following closed session, we'll reconvene in open session to complete the docket. The open session of the April 22, 21 Veterans Land Board meeting will resume with item number 8.
Good morning once again, Mr. Chairman, members of the board. For the record, my name is Heather De La Garza, Special Counsel, Veterans Affairs for the General Land Office and Veterans Land Board. Agenda item number 8 is an action item, and we are requesting that the board, or recommending that the board take action and not renew the GLO contract number 1826200A912 with Care Ends of Texas, and to actually approve the Texas State Veterans Home Program to go out for RFP for management and operation of the U3 Rowan Texas State Veterans Home in Amarillo.
Any questions from the board on staff recommendation, Judd?
No, it is not a question. I was ready to make a motion.
Okay, looks like we've got a motion.
All right, I move to adopt the staff recommendation for issuance of a request for proposal for the management and operation of the U3 Rowan Texas State Veterans Home in Amarillo, Texas.
I'll second it.
Motion is made, seconded, and carries unanimously to approve the item. Thank you, board. Thank you, Heather, for the brief. There being no further business before the board today, the meeting is hereby adjourned.